Hi, everyone. I'm Dave, and you are listening to my podcast, The Reaction Shot. Listen as each episode will showcase a movie that I love being introduced to a friend of mine that has never seen it. We will discuss, dissect, and review each film from pre to post-production, as well as its legacy. Will we see eye to eye, or is our scope of viewing a little different? Thanks for hitting play, because now you're about to find out. Fade in. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Reaction Shot. Now we're at episode 4. I'm joined again with my friend Lauren Drake. She's here to talk to me about this 2004 romantic sci-fi dramedy, The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Yeah, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Lauren.
Yes.
Do you have a history of this movie? I know you said I think you might have seen it a long time ago and not really remembered it.
Yeah, it's like everything I feel like we watch on this podcast, I forget most of I've seen it before, I know I have. Yeah, didn't really remember much. I remember a little bit about it. I just,
Sure.
I remember that he tried to erase his mind, and that's about it.
Do you feel like somebody erased your memory of you watching this film?
I feel like someone erased my whole high school and early 20s.
So interesting. Well, this was the movie for you. Now we know what happened.
Yeah.
All right. A little bit about Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It is written by Charlie Kaufman. He previously did Being John Malkovich, Human Nature, and Adaptation. It is directed by Michael Gondry, who most notably was known for his music video work. He did music videos for people like Lenny Kravitz,
Lenny, my
Good old Lenny.
all-time celebrity crush.
Really? I didn't know
Oh
that.
my gosh, he's my dream.
Wow, you could be his American woman.
I know. Gosh, you seen his Instagram? He is
I have not.
ripped.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if anyone knows Lenny Kravitz out there. Yeah, so Michael Gondry, the director, did a lot of music video works with a lot of big names. He also did Sheryl Crow, Foo Fighters, Kylie Minogue, and more. A nice little connection for me. He actually did the music video by Gary Jules' Mad World for Donnie Darko.
I love that. I've never seen the movie, but I love that song.
Yeah? Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, so I guess we can watch the music video and be like, well, the guy who did Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind did this music video as well.
Kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Composer John Brion, he did the movie Magnolia and Punch Drunk Love. He also did music production for Fiona Apple.
My girl.
Rufus Wainwright. And really interesting, a year after this movie premiered, he was invited by Kanye West to co-produce Kanye's Late Registration album. Kanye loved the movie so much that he just reached out to him and said, let's make some music together. And the very first day, they created Gold Digger.
Wow. Wait, this movie?
Yeah, so Kanye said that this is one of his favorite movies and loved the music in it. So that's literally how that entire album, including famously Gold Digger, became what it is.
I did not know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, and then even watching the movie, sometimes the music's very interesting to me. It's like weird trumpets and pianos, but then knowing that information, it kind of all makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So,
wow.
Yeah, fun fact for the day.
That is a fun fact.
So the cast for Eternal Sunshine is pretty great. Jim Carrey is the lead character. He plays Joel. Most people know Jim Carrey from his early 90s movies, such as Ace Ventura. He was on the television show In Living Color. He did The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, Batman Forever, The Cable Guy, Liar Liar, Truman Show, Man on the Moon, The Grinch, The Majestic, and Bruce Almighty. Like what? Like what a line of work prior to this
Yeah.
film, and they were all in the '90s and very early 2000s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wild to me.
Very wild and just, different. Like he's so like versatile.
Yeah, and I don't want to say that this performance in this movie is his best performance, but I definitely think that it's probably at least top two
Yeah,
for sure.
I agree. I agree with that.
Then we have Kate Winslet as Clementine. She was known at the time for Heavenly Creatures, A Kid in King Arthur's Court, Sense and Sensibility, Hamlet, and this little movie some people might have heard of. It's called Titanic.
What?
So, yeah, something about some ship. I don't know.
Some ship. Just,
Yeah.
one of my favorite movies of all time. The first half, anyway.
The first half, when it was on VHS, I used to always watch the second half all the time.
Dave, we're so opposite. I would only watch the first video. And they lived happily ever after.
The end. Oh, that's awkward.
Oh my God.
It's an amazing actress. I love her performance in this movie. I do feel like, based on a lot of her performances that I've seen over the years, I do feel she really got into this character and kind of really let loose with certain things. Again, in my opinion, but definitely liked her performance a lot. Joe Wood is also in this film. He plays Patrick.
Patrick.
Good old Patrick. We'll talk about him. He's also, he's more of a child actor as well. He was actually, one of his first big roles was in the Cranberries music video for Ridiculous Thoughts.
Wow.
Yeah. He obviously was in Flipper, The Ice Storm, Deep Impact, The Faculty, and the Lord of the Rings film.
You say obviously Flipper. I didn't even know. Like, obviously Flipper.
Well, I guess we're going to have to do that movie too. I used to love Flipper.
Oh boy. I was more of a Free Willy type of girl. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Hey, you gotta love the dolphins too,
Yeah.
Mark Ruffalo is in this film as Stan. He was in The Dentist, 54, You Can Count on Me, Wind Talkers, View from the Top, and We Don't Live Here Anymore. He actually had 2 other movies released the same year as Eternal Sunshine, 13 Going on 30. That's definitely a role I feel like a lot of people know him from.
Yeah.
And he was also in the crime drama Collateral with Tom Cruise. So, yeah. Did you ever see that?
No. I have seen 13 Going on 30, though.
Is that like one of your favorite movies, too?
It is not, though. No.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right.
It's okay.
All right.
Yeah. I'm going to get a lot of hate for that, I feel.
That's okay. Yeah, we'll get some hate mail.
Yeah. It wasn't my favorite little, early 2000s rom-com,
Sure. Okay. That's fair. That's fair. Kirsten Dunst is also in the film as Mary. She was in Interview with the Vampire, Little Women, Jumanji, Small Soldiers, The Virgin Suicides, Drop Dead Gorgeous, this movie called Dick, which I always thought was hilarious. It's her and Michelle Williams, these 2 girls sneak into the White House while Nixon is president, and they become a whole part of. Yeah, so it's a silly movie, but it's a lot of fun. And she was also in Savage Gardens, I Knew I Loved You music video.
Aww.
All these music video connections.
I know. I feel like back in the day, 2000s, it was like the thing to have like a celebrity or like an actress in your videos,
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that was a big draw. Yeah, that's something I love more than watching old music videos, so I'm definitely going to check out some of these now that I know a lot of the connections.
Some of them are so cringe.
Oh, for sure. I don't think I've ever seen the Savage Garden I Knew I Loved You music video, to be honest.
I don't think I have either, but I definitely owned that album. I love Savage. Yeah. I still love Savage Garden.
Hey, you're allowed to, by all means. She also was famously in Spider-Man and, of course, Bring It On. And the same year as Eternal Sunshine, Spider-Man 2 came out.
Okay.
Tom Wilkinson is in the film as Dr. Mirziwak, or however you say his name.
I was wondering if you would be able to pronounce it because I practiced it maybe once or twice, and I
It's
was like, I can't say this name.
it's funny that you said that because I practiced it too. I even rewatched the scene when he first introduces himself, and I'm like, okay, yep. So,
I got it.
all right, so he's the doctor, guys. Okay, he's the doctor in the
We're just gonna
film.
say doctor. Yeah.
Obviously a pretty iconic actor. He was in Sense and Sensibility, The Full Monty, and Rush Hour, and The Patriot, and in a movie that I absolutely love called In the Bedroom.
Hmm.
These were all before Eternal Sunshine. We also have Jane Addams as Carrie. Yeah, I think her name was Carrie. Um,
Yeah,
she
the
was in
friend.
Father.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. Yeah. So Carrie, Jane Addams was in Father of the Bride Part Two, Wonder Boys, Orange County, and the same year, a series of unfortunate events came out, which also starred Jim Carrey as well. Rounding out the main cast, we have David Cross as Rob. He was in The Cable Guy with Jim Carrey. He was in Men in Black 1 and 2, and also in Small Soldiers with Kirsten Dunst, and also in Arrested Development at the time as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
Love that show.
Yeah, so that's basically painting the picture of who all these characters are. All right, Lauren, what is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind about?
It's about this guy named Joel who, gosh, I don't even know how to describe this movie.
It's a tough one.
It's so tough. He learns that his girlfriend, who they didn't actually ever break up, they just got in a fight, I think, and she went all
Yeah.
rogue. But I guess learns that from his friends Carrie and what's his face, David Cross.
Rob.
Rob, right, yeah, Rob. That Clementine, his girlfriend, has erased him from her memory. So he decides to do the same, taken through all of their memories as they're being erased. You know, at a point, he's like, I don't want this to happen anymore. And they try and hide. So some like side stories with the doctor, Merger,
Mm-hmm. Love
and
his name.
um, Mary and Stan and Patrick. So Patrick kind of takes he basically steals all of Joel's memories and tries to take his place. Doesn't turn out the way he wants.
So evil.
So evil. But yeah, basically the gist of the movie is people trying to forget painful memories and trying to erase people from their memories. It's a sad concept.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. You know, I saw this movie back in 2004 when it came out, so 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was in high school at the time. It came out my sophomore year, so I was probably junior year because I didn't see it until it was on DVD.
Yeah.
So I remember renting it. I really liked it. I thought it was very visually appealing. I thought the acting was really great. I thought the writing was really cool, but at the same time, I didn't get a full connection with it. I think because I feel like the story was a little heavier for, what I had experienced at that point in my life
Right.
or anything like that. So I have definitely revisited this film a couple times over the years, and I think each time that I've watched it, I've understood it a little better and have connected with it a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say that I probably watched it in high school too, and I just remember it being very confusing. And now obviously as an adult, you find a lot of things to connect with.
Yeah, definitely heavy subject matter. They do a good job of not making the movie too heavy. Of course, they have a lot of humor in the film, even if it's just dark humor. It's
Yeah.
still present, so it kind of. I don't think it's distracting. I think it helps with the subject matter not being as deep as it is. So
Yeah.
they did good with that. The movie had a budget of $20 million. I'm assuming because a lot of I was going to say the staff was expensive. A lot of the actors were probably really expensive. They also did a lot of realistic visual effects as opposed to computer generated stuff.
Yeah.
So they had to get creative with different things. A lot of the times during the filming, they used different things like cool lighting effects. They would hide light bulbs in different areas of, like, they put lamps in different parts of the house to make different lighting effects. As you'll notice throughout the film, I think lighting plays a big part of things that happen,
For sure.
which I always found pretty interesting. They used handheld cameras for the film too, which I do see online is something that is criticized about the film, because using handhelds, obviously it gets a little shaky.
Yeah.
Um, I think that filming technique's pretty cool, especially for this film, since we're literally trapped inside memories in someone's mind for most of
That's
it.
what I was going to say too. It's like you're watching someone's home movies and they're not perfect. They're being held by, different people, and
Yeah, I think it's pretty neat. They also used wheelchairs and sleds as like unconventional dollies to go through the scenes. So they definitely got pretty creative. I think they used that $20 million in all the right places, because they kind of gave the film as a whole made it its own type of character, if you will.
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty cool effect that they used overall for the movie. It took 3 months to film. A lot of people describe this film as beautifully complex journey of love, memory, and acceptance. So, like you said, Lauren, the majority of the film is us inside Jim Carrey's mind, going through all of the memories that he has with Clementine. Joel has spent reliving all the bad stuff and all the good stuff, and I think you've referred to the movie as being somewhat confusing, and I completely agree. I feel like the first time someone watches this film, you're gonna be kind of like, what is happening? Where am I at? It's like a non-linear storytelling, but I feel as if by the time you get to the middle of the film, it all starts to make sense. And I think at the same time that automatically warrants a rewatch on its own, just so you can pick up those pieces.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I found it so confusing. But once, when I was younger, but just rewatching it and then rewatching it again, I'm like, okay, I understood the timeline. It totally made sense and I got it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do a couple different things too to help the viewer kind of understand where we're at in the story. Because it is, when we're in Joel's mind, everything is told in reverse. So we start with their last time together, the last day they shared with one another, and it goes all the way back to when they first met. So the script originally started out in the future. So the original script that Charlie Kaufman wrote, the film actually started in the future, past all of the stuff that we see in this movie, and it starts with Kirsten Dunst's character Mary as an old woman. She's trying to publish a book titled Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and it reveals at the very end of the movie in the original script that Clementine and Joel kept breaking up and getting back together throughout the decades in a cycle that's repeated itself 15 times.
Wow.
So, without really getting into the ending at this moment in time, do you think, just a simple answer, do you think that you would have liked that more, or do you like the ending that we got?
It leaves it a little bit more open-ended. And I don't know. I don't think I would have liked to know that they got back together, like the cycle continued. I think you can kind of already deduce that from it already. And you don't need it spelled out,
Yeah, no, I agree. One other interesting thing about this movie as a whole, there was a lot of stuff filmed that didn't make it to the actual movie. There are deleted scenes out there. I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever actually watched any of the deleted scenes that have been included on physical media or anything. But throughout the movie, Jim Carrey keeps talking about his ex-girlfriend, or during memories, his present girlfriend. She goes by the name of Naomi.
Yeah.
So she's actually so when they filmed the movie, they actually filmed scenes with the two of them together. So Joel actually spending time with her, and it and it was played by Ellen Pompeo.
Aw,
Yeah,
little
so I think that'd
Grey's
be pretty interesting.
Anatomy.
Yeah. So yeah, most of you guys will know Ellen Pompeo. If you don't already, she's Meredith Grey in Grey's Anatomy. So, but I think that's pretty interesting. Just
That is cool.
I feel like she's, her character's talked about a lot in the movie. It's interesting that they decided to cut her scenes out. Again, like I said, I haven't watched those deleted scenes. They obviously cut them out for a reason, and it didn't really have as big of an impact on the story. And also, Tracy Morgan filmed several scenes as Joel's neighbor, but they cut all of his scenes for timing restraints.
Joel's neighbor?
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
there was a neighbor.
So I guess they had interactions with two different neighbors.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so Tracy Morgan was another one,
Well,
and I guess he didn't really.
to be honest, I'd rather see the Tracy Morgan neighbor interaction.
Well, yeah, I know, right? That would have been pretty cool. Not gonna lie.
I'd love to see that.
And more with casting and stuff. Michael Gondry, the director, he actually originally had Nicolas Cage in mind for the role.
I can see that too.
Yeah, so that's who he wanted, and unfortunately, Nicolas Cage wasn't available. So they auditioned a bunch of different actors, and ultimately went to Jim Carrey. And I think seeing the movie as it is, it actually works really well. I think because Jim does a great job.
He does such a good job. Everyone sees him as this like goofy actor, and he's very like, you either love him or you hate him. Like I told my dad we were doing this movie, and he's like, "Who's in that?" I'm like, "Jim Carrey." He's like, "Oh, I hate Jim Carrey." And I'm like, "Dad," I feel like he's such an underrated, like serious, dramatic actor, and he was just so good in this movie, so good.
I agree. Yeah, and I think just in response to your dad saying that, I understand why some people don't really enjoy him, because I do feel his comedy is very unique,
Yeah.
but also at times can feel a little bit repetitive.
Mm-hmm.
So, you see these characters like Ace Ventura, The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, things like that. You're kind of getting that same Jim Carrey humor. It's Jim Carrey being Jim Carrey, where with this role and several other of his dramatic roles, he is Joel in this movie. Like when I'm watching this movie, I really don't think, even at his goofy moments, I don't feel like Ace Ventura is about to pop up on the screen.
Definitely not.
So, or
Yeah,
even the
he's
Grinch.
so good. Yeah.
Does your dad like the Grinch?
He despises the Jim Carrey version of the Grinch.
No.
Obviously he loves the cartoon, but like
that's
the
okay.
classic.
Respect.
But I'm like, him in this movie and then the Truman Show, I think really haven't seen other serious Jim Carrey roles, but he's just so good, and it's like kind of reminds me of like Steve Carell, how he's so goofy like on The Office, but he has like these roles that just make him so like human, and I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
Couldn't agree more. Jim Carrey did a movie called The Majestic. I did see it, and I remember thinking that he did a really great job. I honestly haven't rewatched it probably since within a year or two when it came out, but I do remember that being a really good role of his. And he also did a psychological horror film called The Number 23.
Familiar, but I don't remember what it's about. Or
it's I don't fully remember what it's about. Again, it's probably been a while since I've seen that as well, but he's a schizophrenic who is obsessed with the number 23.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I'll have to revisit that, and maybe we can do an
I
episode
kind of
on
want
that
to do
as well.
that too. Yeah.
Yeah, you did say that you, on the Ring episode, you did say that you feel like you really like the psychological horror films.
Yeah, it used to really freak me out, but yeah, those are kind of what I gravitate towards now.
It's funny because, this podcast of the reaction shot, I don't want just reactions of people to horror movies, but by doing Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, obviously it says that we're not doing, straight up horror. But I do feel like there is some very, very creepy elements to this movie too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Just the idea of a doctor, even a doctor with a scary last name that I can't pronounce. Yeah, he invented or is a part of this invasive thing where he goes into the minds of people and just steals, parts of who they are,
Yeah.
And, some of the memories that we see in Jim Carrey's character's Joel's mind is pretty creepy.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah, there's no way I would ever, if something like this existed, there's no way I would ever do it.
yeah, that was actually a question I was going to ask you. So, I mean, I obviously wouldn't either. I think it's messed up. I think, you know, all of our memories are all of the things we've gone through, are important to who we are as people, and all the good and all the bad literally make us who we are, I know
Exactly.
that's I know that's very cliched, but it's so true. And then even just watching this movie and, reliving those memories, it's like, why do you want to give those up? And I think that's a common thing when, people break up. They obviously you are fully focused on all the bad things that have happened, or, they want to get back together with somebody and they can only think of all the good stuff. Like, why would I want to give that up?
Yeah.
But at the whole, we're all human, and we all of those memories, we have good things that happen, in relationships, and we have hard stuff that happens as well. But why do you want to get rid of any of that? Because that's the foundation as a whole.
Yep. That's how you grow and how you learn.
Yeah.
Not to like talk about the ending, but like maybe you should be like, stop, Lord, no, talk about the ending.
No, 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 you're
But
fine.
to
You're good.
me, I'm like, well, they, obviously like get back together. It's implied that they are getting back together. But to me, it's the same cycle is going to repeat itself because they don't have those memories and they don't have those tools to be like, oh, wait, I shouldn't be acting this way in this situation because it makes this person feel this way. Or, they're not going to have those tools to grow and to move on and to start like a relationship fresh with the knowledge that they should have. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So that's very true. Like, and so an interesting thing in this film as well, and to you guys listening, Lauren and I did talk prior to doing this episode that we didn't really want to go scene by scene through this movie because it is, again, non-linear. It's very all over the place. The movie literally starts. It starts at the end of the movie, and it just really jumps around. So I feel we have a lot of great things we could talk about in different moments. So I apologize if it seems a little jumbled up, but this movie just introduces different ideas, and you know we find out that they have recordings of all the characters that go through this process. And Joel goes and talks to the doctor, and it gets recorded onto a cassette tape where they talk about all the things that they disliked about, all the things that he disliked about Clementine. So all the frustrations, and maybe they were the things that Joel originally fell in love with when he started with Clementine. I don't have a specific thing from the film, but if Joel says, I absolutely hate the way Clementine sings all the time, but at the beginning we hear, I absolutely love the way Clementine sings all the time, things like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very interesting element too, because at a point in the film, they're both given the tapes of what the other said about each other, and they listen to them. So
Yeah.
how would you feel about that if someone gave you a tape of an ex, a friend, family member, and they
Oh
said all the
boy.
things that that's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah. I'd be like, yeah, I don't want to hear it. I'm good.
Yeah, I'd be like, I don't want to press play on this.
No. No, and like when they were listening to his tape about her and she's like, "No, keep it going. It's only fair. We listened to my tape about you." But then it's like it gets so uncomfortable and I felt so uncomfortable in that moment and I wanted her to be like, "Shut it off," but she
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah, I think it's also human nature too. We sit here and say, I don't want to know what that person thinks of me, but if we had access to all of the thoughts like that in that form because we're curious by nature. Who says that we wouldn't if we actually had that in our hands? I don't know. I think it's very interesting.
I know. I
Great point
know.
to love. Um, so interesting enough, the story, the concept of the film originated from Michael Gondry, the director's friend, Pierre Bismuth. I'm really bad with names today. Um, he's an artist, and he had an idea for an art experiment in which he basically would send cards to people telling them that someone they knew had their memories erased because they didn't want to remember them. So basically, yeah, so basically he was just
This is
taking
an art piece.
yeah, so he was
What
so
the heck?
I guess he was doing it as an experiment and he would actually be there to record the reactions on camera of the person. So the experiment was how would you feel if you knew that someone that you cared about or loved presently or in the past decided to get all their memories erased of you? So he wanted to see how people felt about that, but they would have been made up.
Uh-huh.
So I guess his conscience came into play and he was like, I guess that's kind of mean. I shouldn't do
Yeah.
that.
You think?
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
So he spoke about that to Michael Gondry and Michael Gondry was like, "Hey, I think that would make a great film." So he actually brought the idea to his friend Charlie Kaufman, who eventually wrote the script and included that scenario in the film with Kirsten Dunst's character Mary writing out
Mm-hmm.
cards and letting people know, like, "Hey, this person got their memories erased." I think Jim Carrey's friends, his character Joel's friends in the movie, receive a note saying that not to talk about Clementine because all of the memories got erased. So
Right. And they ended up
interesting.
giving him that card and
Yeah, it's where it all starts.
where it all
Um,
starts.
so I do want to talk about the opening scene of the
Yeah.
movie because I think it's very interesting. So the movie, we're get all the opening shots, and we kind of just open with Joel laying in bed. He's awake. It's kind of like we almost think like, oh, maybe he woke up from a night of drinking or whatever it might be. Everything's kind of disheveled in his room. He gets up and goes to his car and sees that his car has a big, big scratch down the side, like something sliced the side of his car. And he's like, what the heck? And
Yeah.
he looks at the car next to it, assuming that car must have hit him in the parking lot. And he's heading to work. He's waiting for a train to come along. And for some odd reason, he just decides, I'm going to skip work today. He runs away from the train he was waiting for and goes to another one that's going to lead him to Montauk.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets on the train and it's kind of like, okay, well, internal dialogue. I guess I woke up in a funk this morning and I had this weird idea that I just wanted to go to Montauk. By the time he gets there, it's snowing. So he's walking down the beach. It's super snowy. And he was like, why did I come here in February? That's really weird. But he takes some time, sits down, and decides to write in his journal and realizes his journal has missing pages. And he was like, well, this is weird. I don't normally pull pages from my journal. Like I'm constantly writing in it, but I don't seem to have an entry in this for 2 years. Like
2
how weird
whole
is
years. Yeah.
2 whole years? So, he's perplexed by that, and we see him doing some drawing. And then he talks about how he just wants to meet somebody new. Maybe I should get back together with Naomi. She was nice. So he's kind of going back and forth. Do I want to start something new? Do I want to, get back with my ex-girlfriend? He sees a woman on the beach with bright colored hair, and he's like, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Decides to go to a diner, and in the diner is who we eventually know as Clementine. So she is sitting a couple booths away from him. He kind of mentions in internal dialogue again how he always seems to fall in love with women who give him even the slightest bit of attention. Clementine is seen pouring alcohol into her morning coffee. Joel's just enjoying his day, kind of getting in his mind, doing his thing, and decides, well, it's time to go back home. So as he's waiting for the train to leave Montauk, there's Clementine, a couple feet away from him, and she's being really goofy, trying to get his attention. He's just kind of like, okay, weird girl, what's going on? So he kind of ignores her and then gets on the train, and she decides to strike up a conversation with him. So one of the things I really like about the opening scene is that I believe I want to say the opening sequence before we even get the opening credits is about 13 minutes long.
Yeah,
And,
I even wrote that down. I was like, this is like a long
yeah.
opening scene.
And it's funny because as an audience, we're just kind of like, that's weird. He has a big gash in his car. He has journal entries missing. He's talking about an ex. He sees a new girl. To me, the whole vibe of this, it just felt like the beginning of an independent romantic comedy movie. Like this
Yeah.
is we're into this. We're gonna get into this
Are you there?
lovey-dovey world, like pure romance. Like these two are gonna fall in love. I just found that interesting. So when they're on the train, the composer decided to play the music. It's kind of the opposite of how it usually works in film. During silent time is usually when we hear more of the music. It's more prominent because there's no dialogue happening. It's actually the opposite in this opening scene. So when they're on the train, the music while they're talking, the music is playing. The scores in the background. It's kind of like I said earlier. It's like very trumpet heavy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little odd, but you definitely notice it as they're speaking.
I
But whenever
was like, it's like a little like circusy. Like that's what I thought
yes,
of.
yeah, no, that's a good way to put it. Definitely a lot like circus music, and it's kind of odd at first, but it oddly fits the scene as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
but when they're not speaking, when there's big gaps of silence, there's no music.
Yeah.
Because the composer and the director thought that it would be interesting that we feel the same way they do, the high energy of communicating with somebody, and then during silence is literal silence, and sometimes it's a little awkward.
Yeah.
So I thought that was
I
pretty
didn't.
cool.
Yeah, that is really cool, and I did not notice that when I was
Oh, there we
watching.
go.
I mean, I
I
noticed
see.
the music, but I didn't notice that it was playing and then not play.
Yeah. So in the scene, we kind of just get the idea of who these two are. She says that he looks familiar. He's like, I have no idea. No idea
Mhm.
how you got it. And they just kind of talk. We kind of see their personalities and how they're a little bit different from one another. He's kind of confused by how outgoing she is, and she's definitely not afraid to be herself, where he's a little bit more reserved.
Mhm.
Um, and she's kind of like, we're just getting to know one another. And he's like, "What's your name?" My name's Joel. What's your name? She's like, "My name's Clementine, like the song." And he was like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And she's like, "Huckleberry Hound." And he's like, "No,
No
I don't know
idea.
what that is." So she eventually sings a little bit of the song to him, and he's like, "Yep, don't know what that means." So I think that's pretty interesting in the concept of the film and how we eventually learn everything progresses. Also, a line in the song that she's singing, one of the lines is, "You are lost and gone forever, dreadful, sorry, Clementine," which I find interesting because that's the concept.
Basically,
She
the
is,
concept.
yeah, so she is
Yeah.
lost and gone forever, which again, that's pretty sad too. So, but
This whole movie just is sad.
um, he tells her, "Go, well, hey, it's a pretty name, but whatever."
Mhm.
She's like, "Hey, thanks." Yeah. She kind of says, "I'm a vindictive bitch," and he's like, "I think you seem like you're very nice." And she goes on to be like, "Well, how am I nice? Don't you know anything else like to describe who I am?" She doesn't want to be the nice girl. I think that's kind of what I get from that little dialogue as well.
Yeah, she definitely strives to be different. She does not want to be cookie cutter.
Yeah. There's online there's the kind of like, I like to like see how other people feel about the movies that I watch
Mhm.
and stuff. And a lot of people describe her as a manic pixie dream girl.
Yeah, which was like a huge thing in I'd say like the early 2000s.
Yeah,
Like,
I've never heard that term before, but now I feel like I've
are you
probably have
serious?
seen it. Yeah, and I feel like I've probably seen it and heard it a million times. when, really diving deep into this, I feel like I just constantly saw it, and now it's all I ever hear.
Oh my, Dave, I can't believe you've never heard of that before.
Yeah, and like you said, I feel like at this time, I feel like that was definitely a very popular phrase or a way to describe someone.
Yes.
So I was kind of thinking about a lot of movies that came out around the time,
Yeah.
and one that really stuck out was Garden State, which I know we've talked about before.
Literally was what I think is Natalie Portman's character
Mm-hmm.
in that movie.
Yeah, she in my mind is definitely like fits that description really well. So I think it's pretty cool. And there's also a movie that came out a little around this time. It's called Closer, which is
Yep.
also Natalie Portman. And I feel like
Also Natalie Portman, yeah.
yeah, and I feel like her character in that and Garden State are two completely different characters, but I feel like they both kind of fit that description, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. I was actually reading about this too, and some people were saying that Clementine is not that because she admits that she's fucked up. And, at the ending, I think they're like at Barnes and Noble or something. And she's like, I'm just fucked up and I'm not the girl to like fix you or, like,
Yeah.
so that, or like save you. So in some of like the things I was reading, it was like, okay, well, she's not because she's not, she's not
Yeah.
trying to save him. She's like, I'm just a fucked up girl.
Right.
Yeah.
I find Clementine's and Joel, I find their characters very interesting because I think they're very honest characters that I think I think the characters themselves are very tapped into who they are as people. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I will say, I feel like Joel has her so pegged because at one point she says something like, you never talk to me. I don't know what's going on in your head. And he goes, well, talking incessantly isn't communicating. And I'm like, ding, ding, that's her.
100%. Some of the lines, some of the dialogue in this film are and is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
That actually being one of them too, like, talking excessively, not being able to shut up, does not mean that you are communicating with your partner. And there's also a scene in a flashback where they're at dinner together in a restaurant, and his internal dialogue is saying he's looking around and seeing other couples together, talking, and some of them not talking. And he refers to them, because they're not talking as well, as the dining dead.
The dining dead, yeah.
So I think in parallel to what, the scene you just spoke about, I think it's interesting because I personally don't think that the dining dead, that concept, that idea, to me isn't exactly fair. I think it's good to enjoy your partner's company, and I don't think that means that you have to be talking the entire time.
Being
It's
comfortable in silence.
yeah, and, I mean, Zach and I, we're just hanging out at the house, and we aren't really talking, but we're together and we enjoy one another's company. And
Mm-hmm.
I think overall communication is very important, but not having to excessively talk is okay, in
Right,
my opinion.
exactly.
So I love that he does say, excessively talking doesn't mean we're communicating. And then in the restaurant, he's like, kind of like, hey, I wish we were talking because I feel like we're dead. But I think at that point in time, he felt like their relationship was dying because it was
Yeah,
almost to the end. And I think he saw it as, well, now we have nothing to speak about. So like, what's the point? What's the point of trying to save this? So,
right.
good times. All right, back to the opening scene. So there's a moment where Clementine like jokingly like punches Joel, I think like in the shoulder or something,
Mm-hmm.
and that wasn't scripted. So Jim Carrey's reaction is kind of like what the hell? But obviously
Yeah,
the cameras kept rolling. So I feel like that's a moment, even though it's not a big moment. I do feel like that's Kate Winslet really getting into being Clementine, and that spontaneous goofiness that she kind of embodies there.
yeah.
a fiery nature, if you will,
Fiery, like her hair.
like her hair. What do you think about her hair?
Me, it was more of a way to tell us where we were in the story. I do think it is something, like I said, I feel like we all know this person who just never wants to fit in and just always wants to be different, always wants to be seen as like this different, mysterious person. And I feel like that has something to do, like that, the hair color kind of has something to do with that. Like I'm always changing. You can't guess what I'm doing next. And so I think there's that aspect. And I think also it is important to see where we are in the story as well. It's like a marker.
Yeah, I think the overall idea of it was definitely to help the audience discover where we're at exactly. I have actually seen a lot of people online who talk about the hair color at different times and what each color means, which is very interesting. If it was something that they did intentionally or not, I'm not 100% sure. But, people get on the internet and like to come up with these ideas, and sometimes they work. And I actually feel like this works too. They talk about her green hair. It's basically one of the last scenes of the film. It's established that it is when her and Joel first meet. She's wearing the orange sweatshirt, which we see often in the film. The green hair represents freshness, nature, being down to earth, and a new start, a new beginning.
Yeah.
Red is when Clementine and Joel are dating, which the color represents passion, obviously between the two of them. Orange is when their relationships kind of starts to crumble a lot more. It's the fading away desire of an early relationship that you used to love. The orange hair matches her sweatshirt exactly. So it's kind of like everything's blended together and kind of just faded from top to bottom, if that makes sense. Again, this might all be a reach, but I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, that is interesting.
When her hair's blue, it's when they're finally reunited, having previously erased all the memories of each other. The blue hair is, again, the freshness of starting over, but a different part of the timeline. There's sadness. Blue sometimes often represents sadness. So she's sad that they were split up, but they're hopeful for the future. So, again, that's just, people online coming up with different ideas and whatever, but it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
But yeah, in hindsight, I do think that it definitely really used as a marker for different scenes. But so again, back to the beginning of the film, their conversation that they're having, again, is just really establishing who they are. And, the train to ride ends and he's like, I can give you a ride back home while she's waiting outside. And she's like, yeah, okay, let's go. It's really cold out here. And she's like, are you a stalker? And kind of a nutso, So she invites him up to the house. Up at the house, he's in her apartment and he's looking around, and going to someone's place, you can kind of see a little bit of their character shine through. And one of the things he really fixates on are a bunch of potatoes.
Potato art.
Potato art. What do you think about this potato art, Lauren?
It's it's cute. I don't know. I don't know. It's where they like dressed up as different characters, right?
Yeah,
Kind of?
yeah, she basically just takes a potato and it looks like she, takes little pieces of fabric. She makes like little hats and uses some wool for hair, and each one represents a different person or character type. And I don't know, it's kind of cool. I mean, I think if I was in someone's apartment and saw that, I'd be like, okay.
I mean, it's
time to go.
It's cute in the movie.
Right. When I was making, I like to make little promo pictures online for the movies that we do, and I was trying so hard to find a really good picture of one of the potatoes dressed up.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find a really good one. But if you're listening to this, obviously watch the film and also just look up potato art from Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and there are definitely some pictures out there of scenes from the movie too, so you can check that out.
How would you feel if like you went to a friend's house that you had never been to their house before and you saw all that potato art? What would you do?
I wouldn't say anything out loud. I would just take it all in. I'd probably take a picture of it, to be honest, if they weren't paying attention, and then take it home and study and be like, I need to find new fucking friends.
No.
I'm just kidding. No, I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, I think I would definitely want to have a conversation, just like, oh man, like, hey, these are really cool. What exactly are these? When did you come up with the idea? I don't know. Is that like a thing? I didn't really look into this aspect.
No, I don't think it's a thing.
Okay. All right. Well, that'll forever be Clementine's thing for me.
It's her thing.
Yeah. He talks a little bit about his journal, and he's kind of opening up to her a little bit. Obviously, as we mentioned, she's very outward with her feelings, who she is. I'm this person. I'm wild, and blah blah blah. And then he is very like reserved, as we mentioned, and he's talking about, well, I like to journal. Like that's, you have potato art, and I like to journal.
Yeah.
And she talks about how she's always anxious and she wants to know if he's sad or anxious. That's why he has a journal. So kind of, the opposite of all that stuff. And, she says he's nice, and she didn't like being called nice, but she wanted him to know that he is nice.
He's nice.
He is a nice guy.
He is nice.
She kind of leans into him a little bit, kind of gets a little cozy, and he's just kind of like, well, it's time to go. I need to be responsible and go back home. And he decides to leave, and she's like, well, just call me whenever you get home. And then as he's walking to his car, she throws the window up and she yells out the window at him, wish me a happy Valentine's Day when you call. It's clearly Valentine's Day. And, I think she wants to feel that somebody loves her, cares about her on that day. So for him to be spontaneous and do that, by the time he makes it home, he waits a little bit and decides to finally call her. She's like, what the hell? What took you so long? She mentioned a little earlier in dialogue that she wants to get married someday. Maybe they'll get married.
Where'd you go? Sorry.
Yeah.
No, she says, I'm going to marry you. I know
that's it. Yep. And then he gets home and she basically calls and she says, do you miss me? And he says, oddly enough, I do. And they both kind of chuckle a little bit. And she says, you said I do. I guess that means we're married.
By the way, if any girl was like this to any guy that she was interested in, he would run so fast away from this
100%.
situation.
100%.
Like, this is not realistic.
No, not realistic at all. But at the same time, to me, that's Joel. Like, Joel's just kind of like, yeah, marriage.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Like, but he did mention that he falls in love really fast. That any girl that gives him a little bit of attention. So I think the idea of her saying, I'm going to marry you, he's like, all right, she's the one. They haven't even known each other for 12 hours yet.
Or have they?
Or have they? That's yeah, there you go, Lauren. I see what you did there. So she basically says, well, time for a honeymoon since we're married. And she asks him to come meet him on a lake that's nearby that freezes up around this time, and it's super thick ice. She calls it the honeymoon on ice.
Yes.
So again, this jumps into the spontaneous nature of Clementine, and they start heading out on this frozen lake. He's a little hesitant. She's just running out there like nothing could ever happen. She falls really hard and hits her ass on the ice, and this kind of freaks him out, and she's just kind of like, well. And an interesting line of dialogue here. So she falls and hits the ground and says, ow, my ass. And he says, I think I should go back. And she's like, no, come on, come out. And he's like, well, what if it breaks? And she says, what if? Why do you care? Like, we're living in the moment. And it's just so crazy to me because, like, I feel like deep down, all of us relate more to one of these characters. Someone who's super spontaneous and wild, or someone who's a little bit more reserved and kind of like, oh, obviously you're going to have people who are also like kind of in the middle, but they do a really good job of making these two complete polar opposites. So
think you're more like,
I would say I'm in the middle, but closer to Joel. What about you?
Oh,
Joel. Yeah.
maybe even more Joel than Joel is.
Wait, I love that.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've known people throughout my life that are a lot like Clementine, and
Hmm.
there are definitely things about those people that you could admire. There are times where it's like, oh man, I wish I had that carefree, whatever. I would say if we were having this conversation 20 years ago when this movie came out, I would probably say I was more like Clementine, to be
Hmm.
honest.
Yeah.
I took a lot of risks. I didn't care to. I would have been like, well, what if we do fall in? Now I'm like, I don't know if I want
Yeah.
to do that because this could happen, that could happen, so could this.
Yeah.
So,
I also think that people, yeah, I've known a lot of people like Clementine too, and they just zap you of energy.
yes,
So
yeah,
yes. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah. There are times now, especially at our very young age that we are, where I look at these children who, you know, are the age I was 20 years ago, and I'm just like, why do you have so much energy? Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
uh, good times. I really like that scene. He eventually gets out there and they decide to lay on the ice together, looking up at the constellations, and we see a very popular shot in the film. From the sky, looking down at both of them, laying on the ice, and the ice is actually cracked. I'm assuming
Yeah. Yep. She
where
fell.
Clementine. And I
Yeah.
just think it's funny because she's like, "It's fine, nothing's gonna happen. It's very thick." And when they're laying
It's
down,
not cracked.
yeah, it's oh boy. Even that, I think, I mean, if I was Joel in that moment, I would see that crack and be like, hell no, I'm out. I'm
Yeah.
going back over there.
I wouldn't even have made it one step. Let's be real.
See, you would have made one step. I might have made like 5 steps, but far enough to
Yeah.
where if I fell backwards, I could reach my hand out and grab the short line.
So
Yeah.
maybe we're both more Joel than Joel.
Yeah, maybe we are. Man,
Uh,
this is a deep movie with a lot of conversation, huh?
how old do you think they are? Like, if you had to guess,
Mm,
like, what are their ages in this movie?
wow, that's a good question. I would say I could say Clementine is a 27, 29-year old, and Joel is a 30 to 34-year-old.
I was gonna say I think Joel is more like 30, like mid to late 30s.
Okay.
That's what I thought. But Clementine is younger. You can
Yeah.
definitely tell that there's some sort of like age
Yeah.
gap.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's actually a really good question. I guess I never really thought about it, to be honest, but yeah, I think Clementine is definitely younger than Joel. I feel like Clementine is probably in her late 20s, and like you said, Joel definitely somewhere in his 30s, so definitely has a little bit more experience, but I do feel like she's just genuinely her, and I feel like at that point in my life, I was going more the Joel route in terms of
Yeah.
personality. Yeah. So we see now it's daytime. He has dropped her off at the house, and we obviously know they spent the entire night together.
Hmm.
So she says thank you, heads back up to her apartment when a character arrives knocking on Joel's car door window, and it's actually Patrick, played by Elijah
Hmm.
Wood. And Joel's like, "Can I help you with something?" Patrick's like, what are you doing here?" And Joel's like, "I don't know. You're asking like whatever."
Like, who are you? Yeah.
Yeah. So as an audience, we're just kind of like, okay, who's this random guy? So yeah, the whole opening scene is actually 17 minutes long. I thought it was 13. 17 minutes long, and that's where we start to fade out, and we come back in, and Jim Carrey is sitting in that same exact car, crying his eyes out. The opening credits are playing, and as an audience, we're just like, okay, wait, what just happened?
What
And then,
happened?
yeah, and then I feel, since we thought we were in this romantic comedy world, when we jump to this, we're like, okay, this movie's gonna be told a little out of sorts, and they obviously just broke up. So, cool. All right, so we know the beginning of their story. Here's that. That's not the case. What is the case, Lauren? What just happened?
Right, see, this is the part that confused me.
You're like, damn it, David,
Wait.
why'd you call on me?
Is this when he just did the first time I watched it? Did he just listen to the tape?
So he's just crying because they broke
Just
up.
crying.
They're gone. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. So they're officially broken up. This is when Clementine.
But he has decided already to do the procedure.
I'm trying to think exactly how it works here. I guess it is kind of a very confusing. No, so he goes back. So he's sitting in his car. So
Because he had the mark on his forehead.
So as it's playing, yeah, he goes back to his house, to his apartment, and he runs into his neighbor. And as he's there, we know
Not
that's
Tracy Morgan.
Yes, yeah, not Tracy Morgan. Tracy Morgan was a horrible
I
neighbor. We did not
wish.
won this film. But yes, so yeah, he already knows that he wants to do this. So actually, now I'm thinking about it as we're speaking, I think this scene is right after he finds out that Clementine erased him from her memories, and he reached out to the doctors because when he goes back to his apartment, he has mail, and in the mail is the doctor's office, and it has a pill for him to take. So yeah, that's where we start.
Yeah, and he has those dots on.
Yeah, he has the dots. Yep. So that's when they decide to. The doctors eventually come over, and essentially the film just kind of takes off from here. And we're just taken through all the memories. We work backwards, like I said earlier. And as we're going through this, it's very interesting, though. So let's talk about Patrick, Stan, and Mary. These side characters, this side storyline. So for people who haven't seen this movie, Patrick, played by Elijah Wood, Stan, played by Mark Ruffalo, and Mary, played by Kirsten Dunst. They are all involved in this doctor's office that is making this happen. So they decide to come to Joel's house, and they hook him up to all this machinery. He's knocked out. He had to take a pill. He's in a very, very deep sleep. And they have him hooked up, and they're going through his memories. They have a map of his brain, so they're helping him while he's asleep relive these memories. But while that's happening, they're kind of goofing off. They're being ridiculous. And in Joel's apartment, we find out that Elijah Wood is a big old creep. How do we feel about Patrick?
Creep. You know, how I feel about all three of them is Dumb, Dumber, and Dumbest. Like, seriously. Like, I can't.
The dumbest?
Patrick. No. Mary. Or no. Stan. I don't know.
They're all the dumbest.
I feel about these characters. I despise all of them. So much. Like, this guy is entrusting you with erasing important memories. Like, his brain is in your hands, and you decide to goof off, like, and not take it seriously. I wanted to scream at them. I couldn't take it.
Yeah, I mean, they are smoking weed. They're dancing in their underwear on top of Joel in his bed. I guess that scene was improvised. I don't think it was like in the moment they decided to take their clothes off, but I think they said, hey, let's do this. I think it'd be really silly. Getting into that for a second, Jim Carrey has been very, very honest about his filming of this movie and how he didn't really have a good time. So him and the director didn't really see eye to eye on certain things. The director and people working on the film with the director were telling all the actors different things. But at the end of the day, I think Jim Carrey is very grateful for the film. He just didn't have the good experience, if that makes sense. So the director let them improvise a lot. More importantly, Patrick, Stan, and Mary. So they had a script to follow, but there was a lot of dialogue that was added in by the actors, a lot of moments added in by the actors. And the director basically said, be wild, be crazy, be goofy, be silly, like bring it up, bring your performance really up, be animated. But he would always tell Jim Carrey during separate conversations, tone it down. This is a drama. Like let's bring this down. And he was even famously known for telling Kate Winslet to hype it up. We're in a comedy film. Be a little different. Tap into things you're not used to. So throughout filming, Jim Carrey discovered this and got frustrated. So he basically was like, well, what type of movie am I making? I don't know who to be. But
Yeah.
I think all of that just kind of helps out a little bit. I think we're meant to hate Patrick Stan and Mary, and I think by the actors having free will to be as goofy as possible makes that very evident that these people are really, really fucking annoying.
So annoying.
But I think it really helps Jim Carrey's acting and Kate Winslet's acting. They're obviously both amazing actors, but I think it enabled them both to kind of step out of their comfort zones and get more in tune with who they're playing.
Yeah. I
So
can see that. I just
yeah, so the underwear, Kirsten Dunst and Mark Ruffalo dancing in their underwear on top of Joel was improvised. I think they just said, let's do this and be silly. And the director was like, let's roll, let's go, let's do it. So that's
I can just imagine Jim Carrey lying on the bed in that scene, just seething, like being so angry, but he can't do or say anything because he just needs to be still.
Yep. Yeah, it's both of the times that I've watched this in the past week, I really fixated on Jim Carrey in that moment because I'm like, man, he's obviously dead asleep as the character, so they're jumping around on top of him, they're falling on top of him. I mean, he did a really good job of just keeping dead face. So I'm sure inside, like you said, eternally, he was just like,
I feel like he was pissed.
Yeah. Poor Jim.
Poor Jim.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about Mary's character and how she kind of plays into the storyline.
Mary, I guess you would call her like the office administrator. So of why can't I think of the name of the place now?
All this research and I left out the one important part.
Oh my god. Okay.
Lacuna.
Lacuna. Yes, I was just waiting for you to say it first.
Oh, you were quizzing me.
Yeah. So she's basically the girl that like sets up the appointments. So prints out those little things to send to family members, being like, "Don't talk about this person. They're trying to, whatever. They're forgetting them." But she's very interested in the work itself, like obsessively, if you will, and have like a little bit of a relationship. But you can kind of tell it's like casual. He continuously brings up the doctor. Oh, he was interesting quote and, all this stuff. And it is revealed he comes and helps them because I guess Jim Carrey is trying to hide in his memories and he gets off the map and, they're too stoned to like be able to help him do anything. They call the doctor to come help them and she's just like enamored with him, you can tell. Stan leaves them alone for a little bit and they end up kissing. His wife drives up, sees them, and they both run out and she's like, I'm just a stupid girl with a stupid crush. And wife is like, oh, honey, like, oh, sweet.
Yep.
Tell her. So it is revealed that.
Tell her what?
It's revealed that she has had the same procedure to forget about, I guess, an affair that she had with the doctor.
I love that we're still calling him the doctor because
I can't even attempt to say his name right now.
Yeah, like Charlie Kaufman, you couldn't have come up with a different last name for this character. Like Dr. Smith. Like, come on, guys, it's not.
Marswick. Is
Yeah.
that it? Marswick?
Mierzwiak.
Mierzwiak.
I don't know. It just doesn't sound natural to me.
It's not. Yeah.
Yeah, if anyone's listening and has that last name or knows someone with that last name, I apologize, but I don't quite understand how to say it, so I apologize.
Yeah. obviously that adds another layer to this story, and it kind of affects Joel and Clementine, because she finds this out and decides to return everyone's tapes back to them. So yeah, in turn revealing that Clementine and Joel have had a previous relationship.
Yeah, for all you guys listening, like I said, it's a very complex story. It jumps around a lot, but it's very entertaining to watch and it makes sense. It's not a movie
It
that
does.
when it's over, you're just kind of like, what the hell? I didn't understand anything that just happened. They do a very good job of making everything connect and make sense. You just have to pay attention. It's
Yep.
not a movie that you can just sit there and scroll on Instagram and look up every once in a while to um, kind of see what's happening. It's a lot of people talk about the difference between a movie and a film, and I think this is a film. This is something
Mm-hmm.
that requires your attention. It's thought provoking. I think people that watch this, it's going to be could be very split if they like it or not. There's people who, you know, agree with Joel or agree with Clementine and, want to side with the doctor that this is a great idea and vice versa. So, yeah, good times. Sorry, back to Mark Ruffalo's character. He's not paying attention at all to anything that's happening with Joel.
Nothing.
So while we're in the memories, Joel is almost he's present living the memory, but he's present as his current self, kind of watching these memories play out, or he's able to change what he's saying in the moment, like what would I want to say? What did I want to say at this moment in time? Lauren, you mentioned how halfway through the film he kind of, looks up to the sky and basically says, I don't want to do this anymore. Like I don't
Yeah.
want to forget her. And
Mm-hmm.
he decides to start hiding her memories in other parts of his mind. So he was picking different memories that she's not associated with and trying to keep her there to hide her from what they're referred to as like the erasers. And it's just so interesting to me. There's so many really cool visual effects. I mentioned earlier that they try to do as much as possible to be practical with them. There's a little bit of computer generated stuff, but for the most part, it's very practical. And there's a scene where he's back at the doctor's office talking with him, and everyone's faces are just completely blurred out. They're different. There's a scene where he's trying to figure out who Clementine is now dating in the present because he can overhear conversations outside of what is happening to him while he's, hooked up to all these machines, because Stan and Patrick are not paying attention. They're missing, things are wired wrong, so he can hear things that are happening outside. He learns that Clementine has a new boyfriend, and we see him trying to figure out who this person is by visiting
Mm-hmm.
her at the bookstore, the memory that he has, and he keeps turning the person around, which is Patrick. But at the moment, we don't know who it is. He just keeps trying to turn him around, and he's faceless. It's constantly the back of his head, and I just think that's so interesting and very creepy.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a scene where Joel and Clementine were in a memory, and they're walking through the city, and all the people around them's faces start to blur or distort, and things start disappearing around them. If you pay attention to like signs on the storefronts they're walking past, they'll disappear. There's also a
Yeah.
scene when they're at Barnes and Noble, in a memory, and as they're speaking, there's a whole bunch of books behind them, of course, and very slowly all the spines of the books start to fade away. So it's
Yep.
just so interesting. I think they did such a good job of making us feel like we're really trapped in Joel's mind with him and watching these things disappear. Ugh.
This whole montage, like the middle of them, like memories when they're trying to let's hide, like the whole thing just made me feel so incredibly anxious. I was like, oh my god, like my heart was like
Yeah.
pounding the whole time. I'm like, my anxiety was through the roof.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because Clementine in the memories, Clementine is aware of what's going on as well. So together they're trying to escape the erasers, and she's trying to, get him to hide her places as well because, halfway through this procedure, like, I don't want to forget you. So there's a scene where they're running through, in a memory that they're running through a train station, and Clementine mentions, we're gonna go see my grandma. So like that's a thing that they did a lot together. They would go to the train station,
Mm-hmm.
and by being at the train station, they would go to see her grandma. So now we're at that memory, and her character is excited about it, but then realizes that Joel's trying to hide her. So I think the idea was to get on a train, take her somewhere else, get her away from this memory. But as they're standing there having a conversation, all the people around them start to just disappear, like physically, just kind of like disappear into oblivion. They just fade away
Mm-hmm.
really fast. And they're running through the train station, and one by one, everything around them just starts evaporating. So I don't know. I know I've said it 12 times now, but I think they did such a good job of capturing that, as you mentioned, the anxiety of what is actually happening.
Yeah, I
Um,
definitely felt for them, and yeah, like I said, my heart was pounding.
and then Patrick, Elijah Wood's character Patrick, we discover is um, dating somebody, or in a relationship, and we kind of learn who this person is through context clues, and then the actual reveal, which is who, Lauren? Who is Patrick dating?
It is Clementine.
Awkward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's not by happy accident. It's very pre-planned.
Yeah, so through some dialogue, we discovered that Patrick was present during Clementine's procedure where she was getting her memories erased. He thought she was a really pretty girl, and he even stole a pair of her panties to take home with him.
Hmm.
But along with those panties, he also got all of the items that they take that she had as memories that were connected to Joel. So
Yeah.
he got his little gifts that she had given him, things like that. So through context clues, through going through her mind, he learned a lot about their relationship and decides to use all of that information that he got, including items such as gifts, to basically be Joel in
Hmm.
present day. And
Yeah.
he's like, oh, you want to let's go to Montauk, or hey, I got this gift for you, but it's actually a gift that Joel gave to her a long time ago. Um,
Yeah.
but because her memories are erased, she has no idea. And there was a fraction of her, even if it's not lost, that loved Joel. So I think he knows that she's seeing this as like, this is a guy I want to be with. So,
Hmm.
like we mentioned earlier, what an evil, evil man.
So evil. Who do you think's more evil, Patrick or Mary?
I think I want to say Patrick. I think Mary's evilness comes from misunderstanding and not. I don't know. I have to go with Patrick. I mean, I think
Yeah.
he used this medical procedure that is meant to help people, and he's using it against for his own, his own self. I mean, he's trying to get a relationship out of it. He stole, a private thing from a woman, and he's using all of those things against her to trick her into a relationship, like basically forcing her to be with him on false pretenses.
Yeah. But I do feel like eventually she sees through it
Yeah.
and
hmm
realizes like, yeah, it's not authentic.
There's a moment in the movie when I think when she eventually realizes it, and she kind of screams at him, and she's like, "Just shut the fuck up!"
We were all thinking it, and she said it.
Right?
I was like, you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. I think that's her breaking point. That's when she's literally she's completely over it,
Hmm.
and um, yeah, her acting there, her screaming, like she's very, very into her character, and she's we use the word manic. I feel like she's very manic, very angry at
Yeah,
that
yeah.
moment in time, and she screams at him. She lets him know, like, we're done. Like, this is it. Like, shut up.
Yeah.
Cool. So, how are you feeling about this movie at this point?
In the middle.
Okay. So
Yeah.
when we get to the end of the movie, and we now officially know all the things that we know. All the pieces
Hmm.
have kind of been put together. Um, we decide in present time, in present day, basically, like, maybe we should try to give this another chance.
Yeah.
Do you think they'll work out?
I don't.
Okay.
Because like I said, memories are gone. So without those memories, you can't learn and grow you know, from experiences. And they're destined to repeat the same mistakes again because they don't remember what they fought about to begin with. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't think they'll last for sure. What about you?
Same. I don't think they will either, but I do like the honesty with the ending that Joel basically says, she throws back in his face all the things that he used against her, but basically said, but that's who I am, and you are who you are. We didn't work the first time, so we're probably not going to work this time. But I love that he says, okay, but
Yeah.
let's try again, because I think you're still holding on to all the good stuff that they had together, and now that they're self-aware of the things that eventually drove them crazy or to end, they're more self-aware of it. But I do think I love that he wants to give another chance. I love that she wants to give another chance, but I don't think that it'll work out, because all those things will still be there, and they will still,
Resolved.
yeah. So I don't know. I think, I love that they want to give it another try, but
I do too. I thought the ending was very sweet. I mean, obviously, they wouldn't have been in a relationship for years if there wasn't some sort of you know,
yeah,
mutual admiration for each other. So,
yeah, I'm
that what they're feeling again is the beginning.
yeah, yeah, I'm usually, really, I'm usually a fan of ambiguous endings, or doesn't have a full definite ending, and I feel this is the right kind of ambiguous, because we can have that conversation and be like, do you think they're going to stay together? Do you not think they're going to stay together? So I think the original script, knowing that it was going to play out the way that it did, that they weren't going to stay together, but they were going to keep going through this medical
Yeah.
procedure to forget about it. I don't think I don't think I would like the ending as much, knowing that much information.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
to me, that's like the ending of this place, Lacuna, that would you
right.
think they wouldn't still be in business after she did all that?
No, that's very true too. I guess I didn't really think of it the aspect that way, but yeah, Mary gave all those tapes away. All these people now know what happened. They're forced back into these memories that they didn't want to remember. Why would anyone want to be a part of that? Knowing what the outcome would eventually be, it just wouldn't be worth it. Phew. There's some lines of dialogue in the ending scene as well. They meet back in Montauk, and they break into this beach house, and the beach house is slowly crumbling around them,
Mhm.
much like their relationship. And they're having this conversation, and Joel says, "I have to go. I have to catch my ride." And she says, "So go." And Joel says,
Mhm.
I did. I thought maybe you were a nut, but you were exciting." And Clementine says, "I wish you had stayed." And Joel says, I would have stayed too. Now I wish I had stayed. I wish I had done a lot of things. I wish I had stayed with you. I really, really do." And she said, "Well, come back downstairs." He said, I walked out the door." And she said, "Why?" And he said, "I don't know. I feel like I was a scared little kid, like I was above my head. I don't know." And she says, "Wait, you were scared?" He said, "I thought you knew that about me. I ran back to the bonfire trying to outrun my humiliation, I think." She says, "Was it something I said?" He said, "Yeah. You said, 'So go,' with such disdain." And she says, "I'm sorry." And he said, "It's okay." And then she says, "Joel, why don't you stay with me this time?" He said, I walked out their door. There's no memory left. And he said, come back and make a goodbye at least. Let's pretend we actually had a goodbye. So she says, bye, Joel. And he says, I love you. And then she whispers into his ear, meet me in Montauk.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where this part of the movie ends, and we realize she whispers in his ear, meet me in Montauk, and now we are back to the beginning of the film. The
Yep.
treatment's completely over, and he's waking up in that bed where they were dancing on top of him. Obviously, they're now gone. His apartment's in disarray. He walks outside. There's a big gash in his car. We learned that it's from the last night they were together. She was driving drunk and scraped his car up against a fire hydrant.
Mm-hmm.
So that is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. All right, Lauren. All right, Lauren. It's the reaction shot time.
Oh
So,
boy.
what did you
Can I-
think?
Can I say I hated it?
Yeah, 100%.
There are parts that I really loved, and there are parts that I just didn't. I couldn't. Yeah.
Okay. So what did you love about it?
Love their story, and I did love how real it was because we all love like a happily ever after type of situation. I know I do. That's why I stopped my Titanic tape after the first one. But I did love their relationship, just because they're so different, and it just reminds you of real life, like two people who are completely different trying to make it work, but despite differences, like trying almost like forcing it to work. I just thought it was just very real in that way. Obviously I didn't like, we've already kind of talked about. Yeah.
So
I can't get behind the Mary Patrick. Oh, and that might be like simplistic of me or whatever, but I'm like, don't mess with people's minds,
mhm.
You're not taking
So
it seriously enough.
right. Oh yeah. So do you feel like the movie would have been better if those characters weren't how they were and or not technically present? Like if we were really just stuck in their mind the entire time and maybe the medical procedure wasn't working fully. That's why Joel could kind of jump around in his mind, but us not really knowing what was going on outside. Do you think you would have liked it a lot more?
I would have,
Yeah.
to be honest. And that's not knocking any of their like performances or anything like that, because they're all phenomenal actors. I do, kind of.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No. So it's funny, I mentioned earlier, and I think most of you know as well, I just love to read what people think about movies and stuff, and it's actually a very common thing is people saying, I absolutely love this movie. It's on a lot of people's favorite movies of all time lists. Like I'm talking top critics
Yeah.
too. But a lot of the criticism that people do have just comes from the storyline of those three.
Yeah. I
So
couldn't. It was cringy. I didn't love that storyline. I
Yeah.
loved, going through the relationship and seeing all the memories and the parts of that. I really did like that part, and I love the way it was done, but it just kind of soured the rest of the movie. Like it kind of soured the rest of the movie for me. I don't know.
it's fair. So what would you give Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind on a scale of 1 to 10
And maybe
as a
like
whole?
a 5.
Okay.
5.
Middle of the road.
Middle of the road 5. All right,
So,
Dave.
well, on the flip of
You.
that, what would you give the movie? What would you give the movie if it was just Joel and Clementine's story and those three
Oh
didn't
my gosh,
exist?
probably like an 8. Probably like an 8.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you would have asked me what I thought of this film 20 years ago when I first saw it, I would probably give it a 6. I I would have raved like I did earlier about the visual effects, the storyline, the acting from everyone, but the connection obviously just wasn't there for me fully. I also at the time absolutely hated those three characters. I thought
Yeah,
they were over the top goofy for no reason. I think it
for
straight
no
away
reason.
yeah, but now obviously I understand, you know, the deeper meaning of what the movie is, all those things I said before that I loved about it then. I am annoyed by those characters, but I do think they help tone down the bring make the tone of the film a little better, a little brighter because it is such
Mhm.
a deep storyline. So I mentioned that earlier, and I think that's why I understand why they're there. The direction their characters go, certain things that they do, obviously I don't agree with, but I get why they're there. I get why they were written there and performed the way they did 20 years ago. So
Yeah,
I have a better appreciation for it as a whole. So I definitely I give it an 8 out of 10.
yeah,
Honestly, if it was just Joel and Clementine's story, I honestly would probably jump into the 9.5 range, to be
yeah.
honest. Each time I've watched this movie, I think I've liked it a little bit more. Even these last two times I've watched it,
Hmm.
I don't know. I really like it. So
That's so interesting. I didn't know that that was a common. People thought that those characters detracted so much from
yeah,
the story.
yeah. Just like reading people talk about it online. They all talk about how annoying their characters are. They want to punch them in the face. Patrick's a gross, gross man for all the things that he did, and you know, that type of person would be very frowned upon then, and obviously very frowned upon now. The things that he did. So, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I do like the one scene where the two of them, the two guys, are chatting and doing whatever, but they're like whispering to one another, and Mary walks into the room and she goes,
What did
I
you
don't,
do?
yeah, yeah. The way she does it, you did actually did that really well. The way
Yeah.
that she does it, I thought that was hilarious. Every time I
Yeah.
watch it, I've been just like, what a goofball. It's so silly. I don't know.
I did love
But
that moment too. Yeah.
yeah, well, that's definitely a heavier movie than we've done. We did
Yeah.
Scream, then we did Jawbreaker, then we did The Ring, and here we are at slightly deeper film, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I do want to make one quick note about Ariana Grande. Her most recent album that came out the beginning of the year was called Eternal Sunshine.
Oh,
The
okay.
the reason she named it Eternal Sunshine is because Jim Carrey is her favorite actor, and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is her favorite movie.
Wow.
So the concept of the album as a whole was kind of from Eternal Sunshine and plays back to Mac Miller. And she refers to Mac Miller in the album as her Eternal Sunshine, that
Aw.
he's the one person that will forever be her number one love. It unfortunately didn't work out. Obviously, eventually passed away, but he will forever be her Eternal Sunshine because even though they weren't perfect for one another, she is who she is today because of him.
Know any of that?
Yeah, so she kind of based the idea of that. She's in a happy relationship right now, so she has songs on there about her new relationship and everything. But you always some people have that person in their life that they're very grateful for, whether it be a relationship or a family member or a friend that may no longer be in the picture for whatever reason. But I thought that was a pretty cool idea. So
That is cool.
she made a music video to one of the singles on the album called "We Can't Be Friends,"
Hmm.
and it's a homage to Eternal Sunshine. Like she actually recreates scenes from the movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's. Are you a fan of Ariana Grande? Putting you on the spot. I just want to build up the hate mail here. Wait,
Um,
you don't have the answer, but
no, I will say this. I think she has a fabulous voice. That I will say
perfect.
that. She has a
What
fabulous voice. Yes.
what a good response. The hate mail will be less. I just kidding. I'm just teasing. But if you get a chance, I would say you just want to devote 4 minutes to listening to her voice. Definitely check out the music video because there's a lot of scenes that they recreate, and Evan Peters actually plays her love interest in the video.
The guy
So,
from American Horror Story.
yep,
Yeah.
that guy. Yeah,
That
check it out.
guy.
That guy.
Okay.
So, one last thing about Ariana is it's all full circle, I promise.
Okay.
But a couple albums prior to this album, it was called "Thank You Next." It was a huge song.
Mhm.
Everyone knows it. So, she has a line of the song says, "I'm so fucking grateful for my ex." I was actually having a conversation one time several years ago with one of my employees, and that employee told me that he absolutely hates that song because why would anyone be fucking grateful for their ex? And I said, I actually think that's really good songwriting because you should be grateful for your ex. And I
Yeah.
feel like that all ties into the whole point of this movie that I know there are very bad things that happen out there. Obviously, the world sucks sometimes and whatever, but super horrific things aside, we all have bad memories at different moments with different people or different situations. And we're like, man, I wish I could just forget that happened. But like we talked about over and over again on this, is that, those memories shape us to be who we are. Those people make us who we are. And we should be grateful for them for helping us get to where we need to be. I am a big believer that certain people come into your life for specific reasons at certain times, and sometimes they're no longer needed to be there, and they
Yeah.
do just kind of fade away, but those memories are still there, and I think that's important. So you should be thankful for your fucking ex, for sure.
Yeah. Do I know this employee?
You do. We'll chat
Okay.
afterwards.
We'll chat after.
And for anyone who wants to know, or if that employee listens, I'm sorry. But
Oh,
yeah, Lauren, thanks for doing episode 4, Eternal
yes.
Sunshine, with
Of
me.
course.
I think this is a great film. I was actually very interested to hear what you thought, and it kind of played out the same way I thought. I thought you would really love the storyline. I do know that you love romance films.
I do, yes.
I do like romance films. I like honest romance films. I do feel like this gets very brutally honest at moments, and I think that's why I really respect it too. I think the idea about it was told in such an interesting way. It's, given to us in a specific way. So, yeah. Well, thanks for doing this with me.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
I
Well,
love doing these with you.
hey, we got another episode coming up. Hopefully in 2 weeks here, we're going to be doing The Shining.
I didn't tell you, I told my parents and my brother that I was doing The Shining, and they're like, "You're watching The Shining?" That's what they said to me.
So you've never seen it,
So,
right?
never, ever.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to wish you good luck and tell you it's completely different than Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yeah.
Well, Lauren, enjoy the rest of your day. All of you listening, enjoy the rest of your day as well. And we'll catch you next time on The Reaction Shot. Bye.